It is another beautiful evening. Good evening to you, and thank you for joining us on yet another edition of the program Mountain Echoes, beaming to you live from DMR TV. Now, Cameroon is a country often described as Africa in miniature because it has a bit of everything found in Africa. Well, the two official languages top spoken across the world are Cameroon's two official languages, and Cameroonians are so proud of it. Tonight, we shall be doing a dissection why it is challenging acquiring, learning the second official language. That is to say, if you were born with the French-speaking parents, why is it difficult to learn English? And if you were born with an English-speaking family, why is it difficult or challenging to learn French? We would be having a very frank conversation tonight, looking at the socio-economic educational lapses that amount to the challenges we have in acquiring or learning our second official language. We want to welcome you once again on the program. And we have invited tonight someone who does language sciences or linguistics. And he's been able to do dissection of languages and build them together in a way that we can learn them and learn them so fluently. And we're happy because he's not only a specialist, but he's also a policymaker. He's an administrator. He's the director of the Cameroon Bilingualism Training Program, a program that is organized and supervised by the Presidency of the Republic. He's a regional delegate of the Southwest Bilingualism Training Program, what they call it, Southwest Linguistic Program. Thank you very much. It goes by the name Mr. Elime Winslow, and we're always happy having him here on the program. Thank you very much for joining us, sir.
Thank you so much, Yannick. It's a pleasure being with you once again. Warm greetings to all our listeners outside there.
It's a great warm, and we extend our heartfelt greetings to all of you watching us across the world. Of course, it is still in Lent, and so we're wishing you a Lenten period as you journey across with Jesus Christ. Now, Cameroon prides itself as a country with two official languages. These languages inherited from one of the inherited from colonialism has been our bone of identity. Well, if you speak English and French in this country, then you are a Cameroonian. But the irony of everything is learning the two languages is a bit challenging. But learning one of them, if you were born with another, is even more challenging. So tonight, we're looking at the challenges of understanding or learning a second official language in Cameroon. That's our theme for discussion. Let's set the ball rolling with this editorial. We'll be back.
Cameroon, both in Africa, Cameroon, both in Africa, Cameroon. Boy ole, boa monyengi, boe lue, boa molatako. Eole monyengi nandolo na molatako molige, ekoma Cameroon.
In theory, bilingualism in Cameroon is a celebrated national identity, one rooted in the country's colonial past, but repurposed as a vital tool for unity, development, and global relevance. With English and French designated as official languages, Cameroon has long aspired to create a society where every citizen, regardless of region or background, can function confidently in both tongues. However, the lived reality of bilingualism is far more complicated. As noble as the goal may be, the journey towards individual and institutional bilingual competence is riddled with deeply entrenched challenges, educational, social, structural, and psychological.
Cameroon, Cameroon, Moamie, Cameroon, 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 Moamie, Cameroon.
Let's start with the basics. Learning a second language is hard, but learning a second language in a context where language use is politically charged and unevenly supported makes it even harder. For many Cameroonians, especially those in Anglophone or Francophone majority regions, the second official language often feels foreign, not just linguistically, but culturally and emotionally. This disconnect fits into a widespread resistance, marked as indifference, discomfort, or even defiance. Let's look at the educational system. The educational system, while well-intentioned, often fails to rise to the challenge. Language instruction tends to focus heavily on rooted grammar, outdated curriculum, and test-based proficiency, rather than on practical communication, creativity, or immersion. Many students graduate without the confidence or competence to speak their second official language fluently, despite years of formal instruction. Teachers themselves, particularly in rural communities, sometimes lack the training or materials to deliver quality bilingual education. In this context, bilingualism becomes a slogan rather than a skill. Beyond the classroom, let us look at the social context. In everyday interaction, Cameroonians are rarely encouraged or required to use both languages. An Anglophone civil servant working in Boya, for instance, may go months without needing to engage meaningfully in French, while a Francophone employee in Douala may never have to operate in English. Without necessity, there is little motivation. Without motivation, there is no mastery. The linguistic program developed to train civil servants in their second official language is a commendable step in the right direction. It signals the state's recognition that bilingualism cannot simply be discrete. It must be nurtured through consistency, context-specific training, and what have you. But even this program faces hurdles: limited funding, logistical constraints, varying learner commitment, and the reality that language learning, especially in adulthood, takes time, patience, and practice. Psychological factors also play an unspoken but critical role. Many Cameroonians fear being ridiculed for their accent, vocabulary errors, or perceived impurity in speech. This fear breeds silence, and silence in language learning is the ultimate enemy. Until we build a culture where making mistakes is seen as a step towards mastery, rather than a sign of ignorance, we will continue to raise hesitant bilinguals, if we raise them at all. If we have to make any significance in our bilingual drive, then we must normalize effort. Learning a second language, especially in adulthood, is not a failure of intelligence, but a feat of perseverance. Secondly, we need to invest in immersive and practical language education, language clubs, bilingual media content, exchange programs, and tech-assisted learning platforms. Thirdly, and the most important, we should depoliticize language so that English and French are viewed not as a tool of division or domination, but as bridges to wider opportunities and shared national identity. Over and above, bilingualism must move from policy to practice. It must become less of a checkbox in official documents and more of a daily lived experience backed by real commitment from institutions and individuals alike. Cameroon's dream of bilingualism is still alive, But to fully realize it, we must not only teach languages, we must learn to value them, struggle with them, and ultimately own them.
Indeed, we must own them. Well, how can we translate all the literature, all the principles into practice to making Cameroonians love the two official languages and see it as not a language of suppression or inferiority or superiority, but as a language to assist you get the requisite jobs, the requisite opportunities availed in your presence. Of course, that is why we're bringing in an expert to first of all do a diagnosis of the problem, the core problem, why it is difficult for Cameroonians to learn their second official language. Why is it challenging? Because it's not impossible, but it's challenging. And how we can navigate through the challenge. Once again, welcome, sir, and we're honored to have you on board.
I'm honored too.
Right. Before we dive into our point, our real point of discussion, just so we get to understand the person who is going to give us this great opportunity to learn from these challenging the challenges of learning a second official language. Let us understand the man and the position he holds. So, who is Mr. Elimelu Winslow? And tell us how you got so, I should say, so addicted to issues of language.
That's right, Yannick. Elime is a small boy born in Bad Village, in Bangem subdivision, a few kilometer or two to the twin Moninguba Lakes. Today I am called the Regional Director of the Bilingual Training Program of the Presidency of the Republic for the Southwest, and I am a professional teacher, what they call a bilingual high school teacher. I am a journalist. I am a translator. I am a little farmer, and I'm a poet and writer. I'm also a good footballer.
That's a good one.
You know, Cameroonians like sports.
Yes.
And
yes,
I'm also a third division referee.
Oh my
That's
God.
right.
Okay. Accredited.
Of course, I have the training. I was trained as a third division referee.
Wow.
But because of other challenges, I could not pursue that. I also went to the school of boxing, that is precisely karate. So which I also left at elementary level, but at least the skills are there.
Wow, a lot to talk about. I think you're the square peg and a square hole. Today, I want to talk about language challenges in Cameroon. Not as to say that we all have Cameroon as a country has a language challenge, but Cameroonians have different challenges picking up new languages. I mean, something that was supposed to be seen as an opportunity. Matter of fact, I listened to the Minister of Defense of Senegal, who is on a working visit to Cameroon. Senegal is a perpetually French-speaking country. And the Minister of Defense, General Diop, spoke in clean English.
Excellent English.
Excellent English.
I also listened to him.
And I was touched. And I asked myself, what an opportunity has been availed to Cameroonians, and yet we take it for granted. What is the problem?
The problem is huge and diverse. Huge and diverse because we can look at it from material perspective, from the financial angle. We can look at it from the professional angle, from an administrative perspective, from a moral, point of view, from a social angle, from health, health angle, from the socio-political context and its implications, like the Anglophone crisis. We can look at it as a question of misplaced priorities. We can look at it as a matter of the absence of what we can call a language policy, which defines and prescribes what language acquisition should be and what goes with that in terms of remunerations or sanctions and things like that, in terms of qualitative and quantitative language acquisitions and what goes with that. We can look at it also from the political flank, that is, as Jean-Baptiste Obama said, official language bilingualism in Cameroon is a colonial accident, but a true instrument of development of the country. But some people still have considered one or the other language as an instrument of colonialism, and this follows them all through. So we can look at it from various angles. Now, if we have to take the material angle, which I would like to start with, I would even begin with the notion that charity begins at home.
Right.
A while ago, you asked me why I'm so passionate about what I'm doing. It is because when I was a little child in primary school, I was made to understand that your country is bilingual if you want to succeed, especially since I wanted to become a journalist. They told me that you cannot succeed as a journalist in Cameroon without being bilingual. So I embraced the language so early, and this helped me a lot, to the point that today when I'm among my colleagues who are, I'm an Anglophone bilingual, but we also have a lot of Francophone bilinguals. Sometimes when we are together, they feel that I'm telling a lie that I'm an Anglophone bilingual. They feel that I went through the Francophone educational system, but that is not true. So it's all about passion, it's all about initiation. So I was initiated right in the family. Charity begins at home, and that is where my roots are. And from there, I took it as a personal challenge to be bilingual. So even when we were going to school and we had all the challenges along the line, I was not afraid. Some friends would jump out of the window and go out, because I knew that I was targeting something in future.
Right.
So I think one of the first challenges we have is a lack of initiation at the base. God tells us in the Bible that you cannot give what you don't have.
That's right.
So if a child misses anything, whether it is moral rectitude, whether it is language, at the base, it is unfortunate. That child can hardly have it again. There's something we call in second language acquisition, the language learning device, which is a device in the brain and which permits people to learn languages, and it has been established scientifically that the language learning device is extremely active when children are still young. So if a child stays in a house with 5 people speaking 5 different languages to him, the child will end up speaking all those 5 different languages. But when puberty starts setting in and other challenges, socio-political, academic challenges in life, the language learning device starts shrinking. And that is why sometimes when a child loses even his mother tongue, and by the time he gets to university, start encouraging him to learn, he will never take it seriously. That is it. So we have that aspect of it. Now, from there, we have material aspects. Lots and lots of our children and even parents would like to encourage the children towards the second official language, but now they lack the means. Sometimes you need to buy a few gadgets for your child.
Right.
A child going to school without a bilingual dictionary, a child who is being initiated, who doesn't have a pocket dictionary, there's already a problem. Because alone with the pocket dictionary you can learn. You just need to pick up a word and say, okay, I'm looking for maybe a door blind, and you just look at door blind, and in French they tell you it is rideau. There's a lot I learned on my own just with the bilingual. I had a lot of notes in my secondary school books just reading the bilingual dictionary. So there is that aspect of logistics which is necessary. Buying books, some children don't have access to the library or books that they can read, and sometimes the books are not adapted to the needs of the children. Yes, if you go to the A-level programs where they will tell you about authors who they talk about Le Dernier Jour d'un Condamné, things that happens either in France, in Haiti, and so on. They don't have. It is true that they may have some themes that are related to what we are living here, but they don't reflect the African identity. Yes, when you teach a child within the child's context, the child learns better because the child can identify with cocoyams, identifies with Matango palm wine, and so on. Many of our children don't know that in Matango, you still have to call it Matango in French. Je bois le Matango is as simple as that. Okay, but if we had those items, those cultural items in the books they are using, they will ask. So it's so simple to say je bois Matango, and that's okay. That is it. Now you come to again, I'm talking about there are children today who would like to learn the language, but how much access do they have to basic, social resources, electricity? They don't have power. They would like to go. A lot of children like going online. They like Googling things and learning through Google, and which are new opportunities.
Exactly.
But a lot of them cannot afford data. A lot of them cannot afford maybe the mobile phones. A lot of them cannot have access to internet, which is relatively expensive in Cameroon, and it is a serious problem. Now, from the material, we go to the financial, which are related. Those two are related. Yes, a lot of people have a lot of financial challenges, and because of that, they cannot provide the mentioned material, resources and facilities that can help their children to go to school. Now, when we go to the professional flank, let me talk about training. Most of our children go to school and spend the whole secondary school life without meeting a teacher, without being initiated into the second official language. Yeah, if you are an A-level student who had never had a teacher of French in your class, or you're a baccalaureate probatoire student who has never had a teacher of English in your class, it is catastrophic. It is catastrophic. By the time they started talking about English or French, you have already turned your back to that, and you find it as an impossibility. It's an impossibility. So there's a very serious problem about the number of teachers we recruit. I can assure you that the number of bilingual teachers or number of language teachers sent to teach Anglophone teachers of English to Francophones, teachers of French to English is relatively low. In fact, the ratio is like, 1 is to a number of thousands of students. So you can see a whole town, a whole village, a whole town without a teacher of the second official language. And so the students do not have access to that. Now, again, I was talking about the administratively. Let's go back to the base. In fact, the ministry, which should be the Ministry of Initiation into the two official languages, is the Ministry of Basic Education. Because that is the nursery of intellectual education. That is the nursery of academics. But now, if you go to our nursery schools, you go to our école maternelle, how many children leave the nursery school with a grasp of the second official language?
That's a question.
It is true that some schools are attempting to do that. Yes, even in some private schools. But if you look at it on the general flank, the ratio of children who are initiated into the second official language at that base is very limited, and the level of initiation is low. That is why if you go to the secondary school, you have what they call bilingual secondary schools, bilingual high schools, which are just two different, French-speaking institution and an English-speaking institution, sharing the same compound or campus. Or like a Francophone girl, people are married, but a Francophone girl and an Anglophone boy, sharing the same house as husband and wife. You cannot understand English, I cannot understand French. So that is exactly what happens now. So structurally, the type of schools that we have, first do not give the student to have that foundation most of the time. And even when you have the foundation, is not as solid as it is supposed to be. That is why a child who has been given that foundation will not get to the secondary and start being afraid of the other language. By the time he or she leaves the basic education, he already is familiar with the other language. I will never fear, because one of the things, as we'll see very soon, is fear and shame when we come to social factors. Because you have left that thing behind, and now you have grown up, your ego has grown, and they are telling you to go to that thing which is difficult to get, and you start looking at your weaknesses. instead of looking at the goal associated with them.
That's right.
So you have that problem. There's something in education today called sequence evaluation. When some of us were in primary school and secondary school, we had terminal evaluations. But the teacher could give tests during the term.
Exactly.
But you have 3 months, to teach your children and to groom them towards understanding certain notions. And at the end of the term now, you have what we can call a global assessment of the different things that you taught them. But now, whether there's a teacher in a particular class or not, there should be a sequence. After a few weeks, a sequence. After a few weeks. So today, the system of education too is not helping us a lot, because it pushes teachers and learners to focus more on evaluation, on marks, instead of what? Actual training and language assimilation. Yes, because imagine a school where you have very few teachers, and you have few teachers handling so many classes. For example, when I was in secondary education, I used to teach French to Anglophones and English to Francophone, the Francophone section of the school. You said I was overloaded. Most of them are overloaded, especially when the teachers are few. You cannot cover the scheme, but you have to evaluate. What are you going to evaluate if you don't cover the scheme? But if you do terminal evaluation, which I think people should go back to, you have enough time, within a whole term, to catch up what you did not do. You have the ability to navigate the hurdles, and you have that ample time to organize your work in such a way that at the end of the term, at least you've covered the essential. And the test is holistic. It touches all angles. But now, you teach children verbs, or prepositions, this sequence. Okay, the next week you are teaching them something else. You have evaluated on preposition. Next you are evaluating on adverb. The next you are evaluating on conjugation. At the end of the day, those children, they target more of passing exams instead of actually understanding.
They cram the whole work.
They cram. That's right. And that's why things like prepared materials come to what they call cartouche come into play. Yes, because they are constrained. And another thing which I shouldn't forget is that in the past we had very few subjects in secondary school, in basic education and in secondary education. Today you have so many subjects. What I can call subjects killing subjects, subjects killing learning, subjects killing education. Too many subjects chasing little knowledge. That is what is happening in our schools today. You see a little child of secondary or primary, carrying a huge bag. Some of them have already developing hunchbacks because they carry so. And then some of the schools are not even so organized to be able to give. I used to ask my daughter, why do you carry 11 books? You are in primary school, you are carrying 11 books, plus their readers and so on. Your bag is too heavy, Mama. Can't they give you a timetable in school? Exactly. So you don't know exactly what you have to. So sometimes schools are not even organized to be able to trim down, all those books to a few according to the timetable of the day, so that a child, But since a teacher knows that, okay, this is my class. If I get up in the morning and my mind tells me that I should teach general knowledge, I go and teach general knowledge. If my mind tells me I should teach mathematics, it is not professional. And this puts a lot of burden to little children who carry so much on them, which I can call academic malnutrition.
Right.
So if we were to talk about the moral aspect to Rush, or maybe you have a question.
Yes, I have a question, and why we're putting a lot of emphasis on the school or education as being one of the reasons why it's difficult for children to learn the other language. Before we come back to education, I want us to look at the level of policy. Yes, has policy played a role in making it difficult to acquire the other language succinctly? Because even in the editorial, you get it that it's not a challenge not knowing the other language. You can easily go around your activities normally. When I want us to go down memory lane, when the two languages met in 1961. If you were in 1961, would you not put advice policy on how these two languages can operate in a way that it will be lovable and it was going to be operating in all sphere
Yannick, you are touching a very, very important aspect of this discussion. Extremely important, and which is part of the content I want to share with our listeners outside there. There is what we call in language acquisition and linguistic politics and policies what we call a language policy. A language policy is an englobing instrument. It is an englobing arsenal of meaningful perspectives surrounding the development and the implementation of language. In the language policy, you have what you call the objectives of language learning. You have what you call the resources that come into that language. You have quantitative language acquisition, qualitative language acquisition. What is the sustainability element of the language acquisition policy? How do we make it sustainable? What are the binding elements of a language policy? You cannot, it is good to have official languages. Cameroon has done a wonderful job. We are happy. We have two. And it's an advantage to us. But now, if there is no instrument to tell you that if you don't learn the second official language, you face this penalty. If you don't have the second official language, you cannot pass any other any official exam or competitive exam. That is why at one point you hear of people saying, "Tu parles ton anglais, je parle mon français," because they know that they are not constrained anywhere, whether they have it or not. And that is why I think that at one point I developed my own terminology as a linguist in Cameroon by saying that what some of you are doing now is what you call catch-up bilingualism. You are doing le bilinguisme du rattrapage, okay, because you for one reason or the other, you abandon the language, but when you get to a certain stage and discover that, hey, if I don't have this language now, I cannot go bush falling. Bush falling, which has also contributed a lot to brain drain in our country. Yes, if I don't have this thing, I cannot go to Canada. And you start rushing to the linguistic center. You are doing catch-up bilingualism. You are not wholly committed to it. And because there was no binding instrument on you. Right. If in primary school they told you that if you are not bilingual, you cannot be promoted to the next class, everybody will be bilingual.
That's right.
I remember when I entered the bilingual training program in 2010, during my induction seminar, I had the opportunity to have met the director of the pilot center, in his office that day, and I greeted him and he welcomed me in his office. And I said, "Sir, I have a worry. Don't you think official language bilingualism in Cameroon should be a matter of obligation?" Of course, up till today, I still insist that official language bilingualism in Cameroon should be a matter of obligation. It should not be a matter of choice.
No, it's a matter of choice.
Human beings are so stubborn and so rebellious. Because I used to tell people that, hey, why did God decide to give people commandments? He gave people commandments because he discovered that human beings are so rebellious and so indisciplined. And that's why you have to regulate everything. The language policy regulates. People were not supposed to get to certain positions in this country, ministerial positions, governorship, or whatever, without being really bilingual. Of course, that is where we faltered somehow. Though we have done a lot of catch-up through the creation of the bilingual training program and so on. The presidency has done a wonderful job and so on. But the fact that you are not still compelled, it's still a matter of choice, and it's a problem. Yes, it should be an obligation, especially when it comes to official language bilingualism. You should not be, a director in a particular service. You cannot be the chief medical officer in a hospital. You should not be a regional delegate, and so on and so forth, where you are supposed to serve people, where you are supposed to write correspondences, without having those two languages, adequately. That is why when somebody comes like, General Diop from Senegal to Cameroon, when I was listening to him during the 7 p.m. news this evening, I was amazed. He spoke English better than a good number of Cameroonians. It's a huge challenge. So I think the language policy should be addressed.
Right.
Yes, it should be addressed and addressed seriously.
Right. Now, this is the other point. To address this issue, I think that our president had this in mind, that there is a need for Cameroonians to be bilingual. And just like you're saying, the advisors at the time said, let us catch them young. So let us start from the schools. And there came the bilingual schools that were created. The lycée bilingue we see in Moliko today was in Manowabe. It was a Manowabe.
That's right.
And it was a strict. I want you to paint that picture. Tell us how it was then and what went wrong that we now have what we have.
Let me say this. The government, the bilingual grammar school, Manowabe, as it was at that time, was, let us, if we have to call something perfect, then that should have been an ideal and perfect bilingual institution.
Right.
Yes, because both Francophones and Anglophones were given
all the subjects in the same language.
Of course. Yes, subjects were divided. That these ones will be taught in English, these ones will be taught in French. And they were taught to every student. And there was no complaint. And when it got to the high school level, okay, now people had to specialize. But before you go into specialization, everybody had a full dose of. That is why anybody who went to school at Manowabe today, either he's a teacher or whatever, he's a real bilingual Cameroonian. Those are the examples for us to quote. Now, something must have gone wrong somewhere. I can also tell you that was not enough. The government did a number of good things.
Right.
Because I benefited, like many other Cameroonians or some other Cameroonians, what we can call initiation into the second official language when I was in primary school. From primary 3 to 7 at that time, we had a teacher of French. His duty in school, in the Anglophone school, was just to teach French. Monsieur Massobos. That was all he did. So you move from class to class teaching French, initiating children. That's why you talk about en passant le mungo and so on, which we were using at that time. That is how some of us got initiated. But what went wrong along the line, that today you no longer have, or if you have very few. But something else has happened because the population of Cameroon has increased. Yes, if we have to be very, very objective, the Cameroonian government, the population of Cameroon is at least 30 million today. What about that? So the population has increased tremendously. Too many schools have been created somewhere they were not supposed to be able to be created.
That was supposed to be an advantage. If actually there is a good policy, the implementation will be easy, isn't it? Because now let's look at it on this side. If it is a policy in Cameroon that from nursery school to class 1, only English and French is taught, or maybe some mathematics, English, French, and mathematics.
That's right.
So only the 3 languages are taught from nursery school to class 1. As the policy, then we have 2 million schools in Cameroon. They implement that policy. Before a child gets into class 2, they already know the basics. They have STEM and they have language.
What you are saying is perfectly right, because the policy would have also defined personnel training.
Right.
Because you know that every year the policy would have prescribed all those things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That is the proportion of school creation.
Exactly.
And this is the proportion of teacher training.
Exactly.
As far as bilingualism is concerned. So we don't have questions of, this is a bilingual school that has been created for 4 years. There's no French teacher, an Anglophone school created somewhere, or a Francophone school created somewhere for 3 years, and there's no English language teacher. That would not happen. Language policy would have taken care of all of that. That is why I tell you that the language policy has a tremendous role to play as far as the promotion of languages is concerned in a particular country.
Well, and of course, it's unfortunate for us. We're looking at the president, the former president of Senegal spoke very good French. Former president of Gabon, very good French. Leaders of Francophone, French-speaking countries, so I'm talking about English.
English, that's right.
Spoke very good English. They're speaking very good English. Cameroonians are not taking opportunities of that. The presidency identified there was a challenge and then came up with the National
The
Bilingualism
bilingual training program.
The bilingual
BTP.
the bilingual training program.
That's right.
You know, we keep adding lots of it. What value did it come to add?
The bilingual training program, I think, has solved a huge problem.
It has already solved.
Yes, of course.
And we are still in this.
Of course. Of course.
It would have been worse if the program was not there.
Of course. God says that the harvest is much, the laborers are few.
All right.
Yes. So all these factors are still surrounding the bilingual training program.
Right.
Because the fact that we don't have a language policy, people are not compelled to go there. Do you know why people flood? Do you know why people flood the hospitals? It's because death is compelling them to go there.
That is yes.
And that's a natural policy. Yes. It's pushing them. When you are threatened by death, you go there.
Yes.
But most of the time, there's nothing that threatens people.
That's right.
So I thought that if the bilingual training program or the language policy was there and imposed this thing to people, then we of the bilingual training program, we should not be running after people, reminding them that, you know, there is linguistic centers here, they should come for bilingual training. They should be the ones rushing for us.
That's
because
right.
We are reference, the representative has created what I call a reference, you know, language institution.
That's correct.
That most Cameroonians are not even aware of what we are doing. So one of the problems too is ignorance. A lot of people are ignorant about what they are doing. Others are lazy and distracted. There are so many factors, you know. But I think that the bilingual training program has solved a huge problem, because if you know how many, let me just take the Southwest, for example. You know, we moved our number of trainees. When I came in 2018, 2019, we had just about 200 trained the whole year in the heart of the crisis. But we were able to move that to 900, you know, 2023. And the presidency had to congratulate us. Let me assure you, the most important thing that the presidency expects of us in the bilingual training program is outreach. How many people have you trained? That is why the coordinator, Professor Echu, the Minister of State, Secretary General of the Presidency, the Minister Assistant Secretary General at the Presidency, you know, His Excellency Elon Polche, they take this very, very seriously. That is why they are interested in seeing how many people you have trained. If your enrollment is dropping, they start asking you questions. Why it is dropping? And so the fact that we were, you know, able to move the enrollment from 200, you know, from 2019 to 900 in 2023, they saw that that was unimaginable. That with very little resources,
that's just an enrollment,
you know, you could do. Of course, but that is just the Southwest. What about other regions who have been doing these things for so many years? The program was created in 1989, you know. So how many people have we trained? So many. I know people who are ministers, who are governors, whom we have trained. And so the bilingual training program, I know people who have whose achievements cannot be measured here because they go to the bilingual training program with the intention of falling bush, as they say. You know, get an opportunity, get scholarship, and they are tomorrow. Now they are abroad. One of the things that was even happened to us is that we have lost, through brain drain, American immigration grant and other things, we have lost a number of professionals in the bilingual training program and professional bilingual teachers who are running away for greener pasture.
Yeah.
Okay. So they have taken away what government gave them. You know, and some of the people we have trained and certified have taken those certificates, got scholarship, and went out of the country.
Is the bilingual training program actually is it an academic institution?
The bilingual training program is a professional institution because we are focused on language training, but we also do language certification. You have international you know, language certificates like TOEFL, IELTS, English proficiency, French proficiency tests, okay, which are delivered for people who want to go abroad for specific reasons, and those countries are asking, you know, for such proficiency. We prepare you for such exams, we counsel you, we certify you, and you go. Some people go and never come back. Others go get scholarship, get trained, and come back to their country. So, in fact, I can assure you that the bilingual training program has done a lot over the years. But we cannot do
how decentralized is the bilingual training program? Because it appears, it first of all sounds so elitist. So one may live with the impression that it's meant for the ministers, the governors, the SDOs.
Of course, we can.
And those who are ranked as such.
Of course, we cannot.
It's not meant for the average Cameroonian.
Of course, we can't say that because
yes,
most of our children, if you take Boya today, which is like the refuge, especially at the heart of the crisis. Many children, many people have settled here, out of fright. Many children come for holidays, Douala, Yaoundé, and so on, and they participate in these programs. All right. Right now, it is true that the bilingual training program needs to stretch its arms to have divisional delegations, to have maybe district or subdivisional delegations to be able to get to the grassroots. But one of the things we are doing right now is coming up with projects to train children. I have written a project, for example, to train 100 citizens in every division per year, which are tabled to the Southwest Regional Assembly for sponsorship. Yes, since the presidency cannot do everything, we can work as partners, the mayors and so on, to bring them in.
UNESCO can help.
I understand, but it's always good to begin from somewhere. When you want to stretch a hand, abroad, tell us what
project to an assembly that is also dependent on the government.
It's like writing back to the presidency. The regional assembly has budget heads, and that is why they have a commissioner for education. So they have educational, responsibilities. Yes, so it's a matter of priority for them to choose. They have social, responsibilities.
So
they have to.
Why didn't you just write that project to the presidency to request for decentralization of the bilingual training program?
We have already done that.
Because it's a need.
We have done that. That has been taken care of. Because when we have what we call the annual directors conference, we meet every year, at the end of every year to present our annual reports.
Right.
To also present our business plans so that people can see the perspectives we have. Then during that conference, like we have this one, this year, the topic we are addressing now is what we are going to address during this year's conference. The challenges related to the introduction of official language bilingual in state institutions. That's the topic we have this year.
Wow, interesting.
So you are already discussing part of it.
Yes, it's very interesting.
So every year we have that theme. And part of it, the theme is given, sub-theme is given to each regional head to prepare an expose. And I will be presenting, the challenges in administrative, we have administrative challenge, I have institutional challenges. I'm looking at institutional challenges, that's the schools and so on, bilingual training program and so on. My colleague of the North will be looking at administrative challenges. He may talk about policy and so on. So every year we meet. And when we meet in one of the regional headquarters, we do all of these things and we make recommendations to the presidency. This is what we want the bilingual training program to be. We want it to have divisional delegations because people call it an elitist program. We want it to reach, the grassroots.
Exactly.
So that
if it is registering any success, if it is registering any success in a place like Boya, just imagine how much success it will be if you globalize.
Of course, it is. Yes. It is because of that concern, which already we have addressed. But I thought that I could still take an initiative, to start doing something, to raise more awareness of the need. And we can work with local administrators and the councils to be able to train. If a council like Mundemba, a council like Manfe mobilizes 100 people during the holiday, I mobilize my staff, and sometimes with the help of staff in secondary education, we'll be able to give them even a 1-month intensive program in French. It is going to help them a lot. The council like Tombel and so on, or the Kumba City Council, that is exactly what the gospel I'm preaching now. Why waiting for the presidency to stretch the bilingual training program by creating divisional delegations and so on and so forth. So there is much we can do while waiting for the state to act. But when, as a civil servant, when you make your recommendation to the state, especially to the presidency of the republic, is not, as the say in Portuguese, is not any type of person. It's the head of state. Exactly. You have given to the appropriate quarters, and then you have to be patient, waiting for when. But while waiting, there are things we can do, and that's why we were actually congratulated because we discovered that we are going beyond our means. We have very little means, yet we are doing a lot, and I think. It is true that in life, with little you can do much. Sometimes with much you can do little.
That's right.
Yes.
That's very correct. Well, what does the future hold? How do you see Cameroon in the next couple of years, in the next 10 years, 20 years, in terms of its bilingualism? Because, it is a common cliche, this question or this statement that Cameroon is bilingual, but Cameroonians are not. Do you envisage a period where Cameroonians will be truly bilingual?
I can't say that Cameroonians are not truly bilingual because this is a perfect bilingual sitting in front of you. All right? But I can say all Cameroonians,
a greater majority,
all Cameroonians are not bilingual.
Yes.
I want to, me, I'm a very pragmatic person. I do a lot of research on this area. And when people are saying those things, I have to tell them that you should have to be careful because the data they are talking about is not, in science, we say how relevant, how valid is it? Let me give you a typical example.
Before you give me that example,
yes,
can you align with me that there are villages in Cameroon, in the francophone part of Cameroon, that have never heard English, and there are villages in the anglophone part of Cameroon that have never heard or written.
I haven't said no.
Right.
I haven't said, but I'm saying
that is just how bad the
despite
situation
fact
is.
that
For over how many years? More than 60 years, this country has gained independence. There are villages in this country that the second language has never been told there.
I agree with you. I agree with you. But I'm saying that the fact that we have some villages where official language bilingualism has not reached is not sufficient to say it is Cameroon that is bilingual, Cameroonians are not bilingual. No,
right.
Because if you know how many, and then, when you talk about bilingualism, like I was saying, we have to be very pragmatic, we have to be objective. What type of bilingualism are you talking about? Now we don't have a language policy here to be able to measure bilingualism. That's right. A lot of people have bilingualism at their own levels.
Measurable.
You understand?
Measurable.
Some people have it at the international level.
Yes.
Others have it at social, at subdivisional level. And so sometimes you have in those villages, you have what they call village lots. They lot over other people because they are the only cocks that can crow. In the other language, we have them. So, and then if you take, like somebody even told me that, the level of bilingualism among Anglophones is lower than that of Francophones, and I told them, be careful. Now, I said, let me just give you a simple example. All Anglophones in the military, in the police, and in paramilitary institutions are forcefully bilinguals.
Yes.
And most of them work in the 8 Francophone regions of our country, and most of their children are bilinguals. I gave him just that, that food for thought. Food for thought. All Anglophones of the military, the police, and all paramilitary institutions are bilinguals, including their children. Go and verify.
That's right.
Yes.
You're correct.
And most
and all
Anglophones living in Francophone areas are bilinguals. Let me give you a simple example. When I was a secondary school teacher, a high school teacher, I taught in GHS Kake in Kumba. And I had a young man there who was called Etwe. Etwe was not good in French when I was teaching them French. But about 2 years ago, I met Etwe in Yaoundé. He came and greeted me. Sir, I said, Etwe, what are you doing here? He said, I'm working. Working? Yes. What are you doing? He said, no, I specialize in tiling houses. You are specialized in tiling houses in a Francophone area.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. It's only when I got to Yaoundé that I remember the encouragement you used to give us in secondary school.
Interesting.
You get the point?
Yes.
Now, I said, so Etwe, you are working in Yaoundé, tiling people's houses. He's even doing now what we call specialized, French, because he's using technical language.
Technical language, yeah. That's right.
I met another one, in Douala. What are you doing here? So you're working here. I said, so now do you remember what I was telling you in secondary school? Take this thing seriously. I said, I'm impressed. You see that you are now working in Douala. So you can imagine that all Anglophones working in Francophone areas are bilinguals. Whether it is Bayamsela or what, but different levels of bilingualism. Including a good number of Francophones too, who have come and settled, in the 2 Anglophone regions. Especially our those who are closer to us, the Bamilikes and the Douala brothers.
Yeah.
You understand? Yes, there's that linguistic intelligibility and contamination because of what? The level of socialization is very high. Yes. So we shouldn't say that. But we can say, what is the level of bilingualism? And then I will tell you, as somebody who is, a technician in this field, I can tell you that sometimes when people come to us and say, sir, I want to learn French. How much time do you think I can spend here? And I tell you, be careful. you will be the one to tell us how much time you want to spend here. We cannot prescribe to you because we know your objectives. If your objectives are just to have a little language in French, be able to say bonjour and travel, communication, okay, you don't need much time here. But if you want to learn language for a different purpose. So I will tell that people are bilingual depending on their bilingual skills, the needs that they have for them. Yes. If you have to look at it from that perspective, you discover that too many people are bilingual in Cameroon. But the question is, you are bilingual for what purpose? Can you take your bilingualism and transport it to these other contexts and survive? That is the question.
That's a very good question. Now, another sector that can really create a lot of influence and the love for the other language is the church. I don't know. What role can the church play? Because whether we like it or not, at least once every week, almost all Cameroonians, a majority of Cameroonians, converge on a particular church to pray. Can it be an opportunity for also church leaders to leverage language in passing on message and the love for the second language so that we can build a culture of bilingualism even in church?
The church, as you say, the church came to Africa as a companion to the colonial master. The church did not come with good intentions. The church came to be an opium, for the souls of the people to be colonized so that they can easily accept. Because when they tell that, forget about this culture, your culture is satanic, only take the cross and put on your neck, and at the end of the day, you lose your culture and everything you climb. That is part of the story. But the church today has become a true instrument for socialization and education. The church is playing a significant, and sometimes we can say an irreplaceable, role in the intellectual and academic education and social education of our children. That is why the bilingual training program, which I'm heading in the Southwest region, when I came here, I wrote to the Baptist Church, I wrote to the Catholic Church, I wrote to the Presbyterian Church. It is only the Presbyterian Church that called me and said, Director, what can we do together? And that is how we created, on CBS radio, we created the bilingual train. That's how the moderator and some members of his cabinet, called me to start teaching them French in their offices. That is how we introduce bilingualism now to the theological seminary in Kumba, where now every fresh batch of pastors is given intensive language training, English and French, and now they can boast of bilingual pastors. And I believe that there's much more that we can do beyond that. The church, when I used to write a lot in Cameroon Panorama, by then Father Moses Tazo was editor-in-chief.
It's now Monsignor.
That's one of Monsignor. That's right. That's beautiful. I'm happy. Yeah. I was invited here, to talk about when Father Pierre Aimé was, just replaced by Moses Tazo. I was invited here for us to reflect. Jomo Kevin was here, in these premises of yours, to reflect on the new face of the panorama. And one of the things I said was, let the panorama be bilingual. It must not be totally bilingual, but let's have one or two things once in a while in French. Because
and of course
the Catholic Church is a multilinguistic church.
Yeah.
Catholic Church is a multilinguistic church.
That's correct.
Yes. So let us embrace French. Right now, we are encouraging the creation of Francophone communities in Anglophone churches and parishes. True or false?
That's correct.
Yes. When I was in St. John's Parish, Kumba Town, we had a Francophone community. After some time, Francophone communities, they create their own parish, like the one you have here below the Butingi market there. Yes. And so on. So
Saint Michel.
Of course, that's right. So that is a justification of what I was trying to say. So I think the church has to step up. Even what you are doing here on TV is a wonderful thing. When I watch Salve Virginius in the morning, a bit of French, which is good. But we can go beyond that. We can go beyond that. We can create programs. We can create programs on TV. We can create programs on radio, where we can do a bit of, and then the schools too. the schools, because the Catholic, for example, the Presbyterians and Baptists, they have created hospitals, they have created schools. Now, for you in a Catholic or Baptist hospital as a medical officer, what is your level of bilingualism? How do you receive people of the other official language? And that is why I think the church should step up its bilingual training for all the facets, of their services. Be it the health, the educational services. What is the level of bilingualism in the Catholic colleges, the Presbyterian colleges, the Baptist colleges, and other church academic institutions? Whether they are health, whether they are theological, like they have in the seminary, they should be bilingual. What we are doing in the theological seminary in Cuba is French and English adapted to religion. Yes, children learn to read the Bible in French, learn to quote scripture in French and other things. The values of the divine values like peace and so on, they need to use those notions in the other language. Yes, so that when the pastor tomorrow is inducted and so on, he's not blank in the other language. He can even write a correspondence. That is where the church should go. So the church has a long way to go, but a huge opportunity, because the church is, like I always say, is a multilinguistic, institution.
That's right.
Yes, multilinguistic institution, not only at the international level, but even at local level. When we are talking about ecclesia in Africa, when we are talking about, enculturation, so many traditions, so many local languages come into church singing, church music, and all the like. It's a wonderful success. Let us step it up now, to official bilingualism. The bilingual training program, we are there to accompany whosoever is ready. Yes, and in the schools too, the quality of the teachers, who teach those languages should be examined properly. Yes, the church can also help, or ask us to give them training, give training to those teachers, because there are teachers in some of those institutions who are language teachers who are not trained. I'm not saying that they are useless. Some of them are doing a wonderful job, but if they are given training, even short, training courses. Reverend Father, the priest of the church, what is the level of bilingualism? The diocese can support those priests who are interested, to come to the linguistic center, or we come, because we do what we call outreach, or on-site and offline. We can go and meet them. If maybe at the bishop's house they have a place where they can be given, short courses in the other languages.
Language.
And there's much we can do, brother. Right. There's much we can do. We are ready. But I wanted just to add that, as far as the challenges are concerned, sometimes some people have health challenges. Some people have visual impairments. And when they come to class, they cannot cope with language training. You have people who have other health challenges. We have talked about insecurity, in the Southwest Northwest, which played a fundamental role, in drawing us back this bilingualism, official bilingualism train. I've talked about ignorance. Then, as far as social factors are concerned, there is favoritism. Favoritism, tribalism, all those things have discouraged a lot of people. Teachers who are not morally upright sometimes discourage children from their classes. You know that you are teaching a difficult subject. Instead of making the subject easier to attract children, you make it harder. You become violent, you insult children when they make errors, you beat them up and so on. You are destroying the bilingualism we are struggling to build. That's right. Yes. Today, a lot of students, when they go to maturity, people develop shame and fear. When you see, there's also something in secondary school, they call the bilingual class. I'm not comfortable about that. Yes, because when you create a bilingual class, for students who are very sharp, they belong to the bilingual class. What message are you sending to the other children? That
it is an elitist program.
Of course, I'm not comfortable with that. Secondly, teachers are encouraged to summarize. But you are teaching geography at the end of maybe a few minutes to the end of the lesson, you summarize it in French. What French do they have? That can even lead to ridicule and make the whole thing a child's play. Because a child can be in that class who knows French better than you, and by the time you start fumbling in making a summary in French or in English, they start transforming you into a laughing stock. So I think sometimes those who are encouraging, advising government, the technical advisors in the ministry, should be careful about what they adopt. We're not saying that their work is useless. No, they are doing a wonderful job. They should avoid things that will boomerang, you know, in the course of solving a problem, you create other problems. We should be careful about that.
Right.
You know.
I want to thank you immensely for coming. We're definitely going to have other occasions to talk about this, because it is a great concern, and I think that we need to add our voices to inform policy on how the governance, especially leading to the learning and teaching of the 2 official languages, are concerned. Now, we want to thank you, Mr. Elime Winslow, the Regional Director of the Bilingual Training Program, the Southwest Regional Branch of it. Is based here in Bowie. I want to thank you for your time, sir.
It's a pleasure always to be with you. Once again, we thank the authorities of the Catholic Church, the Diocese of Bowie, for this wonderful instrument of, you know, divine teaching and socialization and education and entertainment. And we feel that nobody, the state cannot do everything by itself. You know, everything about life is like a football team. That's right. Everybody plays his own role. And when everybody plays his own role, you discover that success is shared. That's and everybody smiles. And so the only thing I can say that, let us, all of us, you know, get on deck, but know that the bilingual training program, what they call the linguistic centers, are there to accompany you. Don't say that you are too busy, because we have flexible courses for those who are too busy. Yes, they can negotiate where they can negotiate time. There's no problem. If we can transform illiterate people into literate people, then what can we not do? So it's a matter of synergy. Work together and make this country proud, and make one another proud too. Because when you have the second official language, you feel in yourself. You feel have a different aura.
You can go anywhere in this country
and beyond. Yes, and beyond. People respect you for that. That is why when you go out of Cameroon without French or without English, people are embarrassed and start asking, "Are you sure you are Cameroon?"
That's right.
You know,
Cameroonians who cannot express themselves in another language elsewhere, it's a problem.
Wherever they see you,
how can we make the other language so lovable, like TikTok, like Facebook, like the way we're so addicted to some of these things?
It's a matter of motivation. Yes. You know, let us motivate those who are teaching those languages. Bilingual teachers do a lot of work. They teach English, they teach French. Why can't you give them special allowances? Create a bilingual allowance. Why can't you not give people bilingual medals of bilingualism? You know, why can't you continue to boost, you know, training in primary, secondary schools by giving children, you know, ministries making some allocation for children, you know, compensation, you know, when prize awards in every school, those things should come back. Some of us benefited from those things in primary school. Some schools are doing it, but we need to come out, motivate, a lot of motivation. I can assure you, there's no bridge that motivation cannot cross.
That's right. So there is a need for the creation of a Ministry of Language, isn't it? A Ministry of Language in this country.
We may not actually. I'm one of those people who think that the ministries are so many and that we can compress them, but you can have what you can call, if you want to talk about Ministry of Bilingualism, but you can associate with the Ministry of Culture. Which are related.
No, we need a ministry that is separated.
Then you have in that ministry, okay, the Department of Bilingual Promotion or something of that nature.
We have lots of
my fear is that when you too many ministries,
we have lots of technologies addressing bilingualism issues in this country, but we're still having concerns. We have the bilingualism training program that is on. We have a commission for bilingualism. And we are still struggling to understand many things. But then we are going to have time to talk about that. Thank you very much, Mr. Elime Winslow, for sharing with us your time. Dear viewers, on this note, we place a cap on today's edition of Mountain Echoes. My name is Yannick Fonke. And like you know, we're joined today by Mr. Elime Winslow. He is the Regional Director for the Bilingualism Training, the Bilingual Training Program, I beg your pardon, based here in Bowie. It's a program that's under the Presidency of the Republic. JC Agum, mount the broadcasting and transmission. Will be again tomorrow. Good night.